Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, Circular Economy Policies and Food Waste. And thank you for joining us today. And for some of the participants, it's so late in the evening. It's almost midnight. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yasuo Furusawa from Tokyo Metropolitan Government. I'm going to host you as a moderator today.
Once again, welcome to this international seminar by the TMG. My name is Yasuo Furusawa, Director specialized in Sustainable Materials Management. Tokyo would like to work with cities around the world to exchange information to promote the shift to a circular economy and to promote 3R. Today, we have selected the topic of food waste because this is an important issue for many cities, and we have been able to have the participation from many cities today. I hope that today's webinar will offer some insights in tackling this issue. Today, we have 32 cities from around the world, and I would like to just introduce the names of the cities that are participating.
Accra, Addis Ababa, Auckland, Baguio, Bangkok, Berlin, Bogota, Copenhagen, Durban, Guam, Istanbul, Jakarta, Johannesburg, Kuala Lumpur, Lagos, Manila, Medellin, Melbourne, Mexico City, Milan, Nairobi, Cleveland, Paris, Quezon, San Francisco, Singapore, Taipei, Tel Aviv, Tokyo, Tomsk, Toronto, Vancouver, and three international organizations, C40, ICRE, including ICRE Hong Kong and ICRE Quezon, and APO.
In total, 32 cities and 4 organizations have joined us today. Thank you very much. Today we have 2 special guests. For the keynote speech in part 1, we will welcome Dr. Tomoko Okayama of Taisho University. She will present us on the management of food waste from households in Japan. And in part 2, Mr. Akihiro Saruta of Tokyo Clear Center Corporation, which is also situated in Tokyo, will introduce how they produce animal feed as an example of sustainable use of food waste. There will be a question and answer session after each presentation. Also, please enter your questions in the chat box during the presentations. In part 3, we will have an open discussion, and we would like to hear the measures taken to promote circular economy and to prevent waste from the food. And maybe we can share the issues that we are facing today. We will first have a brief introduction from Tokyo and Singapore about the 10-minute presentation, and then we will ask the representatives of the other participating cities to provide brief comments. However, because we have so many participants today, we may not have sufficient time for each city to speak. But we do hope that many cities will provide us with comments. So if you would like to make a comment, please enter your city name and speaker name in the chat box between the time of part 1, part 2. So without further ado, I would like to invite the keynote speaker, Dr. Okayama, please. She is going to talk about how to define food waste from households and how this can be reduced. Dr. Okayama, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, I am Okayama, Tomoko Okayama from Taisho University. Without further ado, I would like to start. How to identify the quality and quantity of food waste or loss generated by household. This is my topic today. There is a term which says if you can't measure it, you cannot manage it. As the phrase say, if we are to implement policies to reduce food waste, first we need to measure the food waste. First of all, the background. As you all know, the food waste and the food loss reduction policies have the background of SDGs. SDG 12.3. This target says by 2030, half per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels and reduce food losses along production and supply chains, including post-harvest losses. So food waste is considered during the retail and consumer levels, and in the upper three ones, it's called food losses for production and supply chains. So food waste generated at households, what kind of waste are they, and what is the definition of this, and how can we measure them? So using the 2015 as a base year, it says we issued half the amount. And how can we grasp the situation? First, let's think about the definition. First of all, so far at the United Nations, there are various discussions on how to deal with the definition of food waste. FAO at the beginning said that basically food waste and food loss was considered to be edible parts. That was the original thinking. There are fish bones and the shell of eggs or the seed of fruit that is very difficult to eat. And those inedible parts can be disposed. So only edible part, which is assumed to eat, should be reduced without wasting them. That was the basic concept. Food loss include food waste. So under food loss, food waste is included in the agricultural farms and the fishery area. Some leftover food and fish is not included in food loss. Next, now let's look at the situation of UK. UK RAP, UK Waste and Resource Action Program. This group conducts survey or research in the UK. According to the UK RAP, in the past, unavoidable food waste was said as the edible thing. Depending on some people, depending on how you cook, or depending on the types of vegetables, there are parts that you eat or you don't eat. And that part is considered as possible avoidable waste. That's how UK RAP defined. Now Japan. What is a situation or definition of Japan, which is very complicated because the chart is very different. In Japan first, we have term of food loss. That is the edible part. So food loss is considered to be edible part. So inside the food loss that is edible, according to UK RAP, avoidable food waste is included. So Japanese food loss includes UK RAP's possibly avoidable. So food waste includes edible and inedible. So everything can be categorized and called as food waste. And inside the food waste, partially edible part, that is the food loss, is included. That's the definition of Japan. Now EU, lastly, Europe. So the upper stream of food flow from here and above. The above one is called as food loss, and the retail and below in the lower stream is called as food waste. So not only the edible part, but the inedible part is included here. But what is seen as a characteristic of the EU, for example, is a feed of animals, cattle, or some recycled biomaterials are not counted or does not have to be counted as food loss or waste in terms of counting. That's how EU defines. Now, what was the result of the UNEP SDGs 12.3? There is a food waste index, tier 2, was established. There, the final indicator, as you can see here, the result is very close to the situation of Europe. or EU. In the upstream, it's called the food loss, and downstream, there is a mistake of retail, and down, it's a food waste. So food waste include retail, and below there is some mistakes on the slide, and it includes not only edible and inedible parts, but just like EU, so when food waste is recycled to animal feed, then that can be counted as food, not the wasted food. Now, food waste index tier 2. In many parts or areas, to grasp the entire urban waste is rather difficult in some cities. So to grasp the situation in detail is rather challenging. But as a level 1, the amount of food waste can be tried to grasp as minimum. And if that's possible, we can go to level 2, that is to grasp the situation by separating household and business waste by source. And furthermore, if we can stretch more or then distinguish between edible parts and inedible parts and identify the amount of feed or material recycling, which is not included in food waste by definition. So depending on the country, there was a decision to set up a level. Currently in many parts of the world, the entire metropolitan waste is not grasped. So among them, just to measure the edible part is rather a big challenge. Having said that, without understanding the current situation, we cannot take countermeasures. Therefore, we have to start thinking from here. But according to the recent information, or latest information in EU, this indicator or index is being considered in the last week's committee meeting. We should not leave things uncompleted. So if some policy is introduced, some effect measurement should be conducted. So we can set up certain area and before and after, and composition survey can be done to measure the actual situation. That will be the situation. So in the EU, they are going to engage in level 3 at the same time as they are requested to demonstrate the results of the effect. In Japan, edible part was supposed to be reflected to begin with, so that situation is becoming closer to the situation in Japan. Now, the food waste treatment in Japan, the current situation. Actually, in 2000, there is a law established, that is a food recycling law, which was established a long time ago. And this covers only businesses, but the food waste generated in businesses should be recycled, and it's being recycled based on this law. So when we think about this, the food waste in businesses actually have been halved, we could say in that way. However, in Japan, avoidable food waste, there it says, we would like to hasten the food waste that is avoidable food waste. So we have to think about having this part. And as for this food recycling law, this law applies only to businesses, while the green part, the food waste generated from household, currently it's measured at 2.757 million tons. However, there is an issue in methodology of measurement, so it's not valid, meaning that we do not know the actual situation of food loss or food waste from households. And in order to reflect the food waste from Japan, from households, food loss or available food waste should be actually measured in Japan. So what shall we do? So we need to measure this. And to do that, first we have to define avoidable food waste from households. And as for measurement method, for the avoidable food waste, we have to use something agreeable internationally. And first we need to establish that method, and we have actually measured the avoidable food waste. And we call Tokyo method when it comes to categorization method, which is available on the URL written here. I hope you will look at this English version after downloading it. Now, the concept of Tokyo method, the key here. So we categorize and do the survey. So we open the food waste bag and then we try to categorize. So easy to understand is something very important, and we have to be able to easily sort food waste into categories. If there is a mayonnaise, if we have to remove the contents inside after opening the cap, it will be a big challenge. So easy to sort food waste into categories is important. And the third is, as for categorize avoidable food waste, what kind of measures should be effective to reduce the avoidable food waste? That also needs to be easily considered. So now, definition of food. What is the flow of food and stages of food waste generation in households? As you know, for example, you go to the supermarket and buy some food. In many countries, perhaps we do the similar things. So at home, there are two types of food. One is the ingredient to be cooked. Naturally, the ingredients to be cooked are prepared in kitchen, and those prepared food are served on the table and eaten by everyone. And the other one is already prepared food, ready to be eaten. So those are prepared food ready to be eaten. For example, instant food, you put hot water to be served on the table to be eaten. But for those cooking ingredients, there are cases that you are not able to utilize the entire ingredients and you may waste them. So unused ingredients is categorized as A, as unused ingredients. And for those prepared food, which were bought or something which was prepared and then went back to the refrigerator and wasted, such food is called as unused or ready to be eaten food and categorized as B. And during cooking, there could be some skin of vegetables and the seed of fruit which is generated during cooking are considered to be unedible and intentionally removed, so it's categorized as D. And the fish bones after being eaten, that's edible part, is also categorized as D. So the food loss in Japan or avoidable food waste include A, that is unused ingredients, and B, unused ready to be eaten food, and C, leftovers. So those total of A, B, C is considered as avoidable food.
This includes various items, and now we come to B. Unopened food are B1, B dash, and B2, uneaten food. And many of these are confectionaries. This is very characteristic of Japan. So we eat a lot of rice, and after cooking the rice, we usually wrap it and then freeze it, but often we end up not eating the rice. So that is why you see a lot of this white stuff as uneaten food. And leftovers, C. These are like bread that you ate partially, and bento boxes that you only ate parts of. And D, possible food waste. Actually, there are subcategories. E stands for edible. So these are intentionally removed, but it's still edible. And I think that the people who threw this away, for example, the skin of the watermelon, or the broccoli stem, or this is the green part of the green onion. For some reason, in the eastern parts of Japan, like Tokyo, people do not eat the green parts. On the other hand, for Osaka or the western part of Japan, people enjoy eating this green part. So there are regional differences in which part of the vegetable people eat. And then DI. These are like the shells of the eggs or the corn husks and shells and so on. These are usually not eaten by anybody. And then DE might be slightly tricky because these are possibly avoidable in that UK wrap definition, because if you want to eat, you can still eat. So maybe this DE could be included as food loss. However, we believe that the definition should be from the upper box. Now, going from here, we did the food waste sorting analysis. We collected the residential garbage bags and brought them to the area for analysis. And then we used these buckets. These are students that helped us. And so we sorted the trash into different categories. And then after categorizing, we weighed them. And this is actually quite important here. If possible, these unopened or unused items, there is usually a consumed by a date, best by date. So we checked the date of the consumption to find out the reason. And please make sure to photograph each step. And then we were able to categorize them into these different categories. And this is the result of the analysis. This gray area shows the uneaten, intentionally removed items. What is considered food loss in Japan would be the colored parts, which look slightly small. Actually, 42.1% was considered food loss in the definition of Japan. And then when looking within the avoidable food waste, for example, Setagaya, Ward, Kogane area, these are Tokyo. We see more leftovers than other cities outside of Tokyo. And then overall, there are many unused ingredients and food waste. And these are actually on the opposite scale. And then in the farming areas, there is more food ingredients. So basically, we believe that the sorting worked. It was easy to understand. There was little confusion, and even students were able to categorize the items. Also, food ingredients and unused food are quite different in character, so we need to have different strategies to reduce both. And this is my last slide. Once again, the Tokyo Method Manual is shown in this URL. If you're interested, please access this to download. So, it is difficult to understand the situation of organic waste out of the municipal waste. But if possible, please classify the organic waste as food or non-food. And then, if possible, please classify the food as edible or inedible. And if difficult, first classify number one. And it will be preferable to understand by excluding the non-food organic waste and to measure that as much as possible. Thank you very much for your attention today. Next, we would like to introduce Tokyo Clear Center, involved in the Tokyo Super Ecotown project to turn food waste to animal feed, together with their group company Alpha.
I'm Tanami from Tokyo Clear Center. In Ota Ward of Tokyo, we receive food waste and then we operate a plant to generate feed for cattle. First of all, I would like to share with you the initiatives of our plant. We will show you the DVD, and after that, we would like to give you some supplementary comment. May I make some supplementary explanation using the PowerPoint for 5 minutes or so? Now, the food recycling situation in the metropolitan area. I would like to share with you this summary. So there may be some overlap between DVD and what I'm going to say, but based on the food recycling law, for those four categories, food manufacturing, food wholesale, food retail, and restaurant industry, these four industries are covered by the food recycling law. You see the FY 2017, the annual volume of generated waste here. Against this, according to the law, by a type of a business category, the reduction target rate is set up. For example, manufacturing 95% and the restaurant industry in the downstream 50% reduction. In order to achieve these goals, various industries are taking action. Now, what's the current situation? It's shown in blue. Restaurant industry, food manufacturing 96% achieved, retail 57% achieved, and in other industries, their recycling rate percentage is close to their target rate. So for those operators who generate 100 tons or above per year needs to report, while for those business operators which generate less than 100 tons per year do not have to report. So if we combine them, only in the manufacturing industry they are able to achieve. Looking at the downstream, in the restaurant industry, the ratio is 31%, which is very low. Well, only food manufacturing sector has achieved the recycling rate. Now in FY 2019, there was a review of the basic policy, and these target rates have been elevated furthermore. Wholesale and retail, the percentage was lifted, and for the food manufacturing and restaurant industry, they kept the same target rate. And by FY 2024, in order to achieve these goals, various industries and operators are taking actions. Now, the food waste recycling, the current status in Tokyo metropolitan area, including Tokyo and in peripheral cities, Kanagawa, Chiba, Saitama prefectures. So those four prefectures' numbers are selected from the nationwide numbers. As you can see here, the number of Tokyo is relatively low in comparison to other prefectures. So what has been impacting this low number of Tokyo? The manufacturing of food, the number for Tokyo of food manufacture is low in comparison to other prefectures. It is rather difficult to build the food manufacturing plants in Tokyo. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why the food manufacture number in Tokyo is lower than other prefectures. While if you look at the food retail and restaurant industry in Tokyo, the number is higher than those in other prefectures. So recycling ratio of these four prefectures are shown here. In comparison to the nationwide situation, the numbers is relatively lower for any business. In particular, food wholesale, the recycling rate is very low in these four prefectures. Honestly, I don't know what's the reason for this, but these are the numbers that I can share with you. Next, those original percentage of the food waste brought to ARFO. As for producer of waste from hotel, restaurant, fast food restaurant, supermarket, and department stores, accounts for around 70% of the total food waste brought to ARFO. As mentioned earlier, for Tokyo, retail and restaurant industry number is high. That's the reason why the percentage of food waste from those areas is high.
Next, let me talk about where the food waste is coming from. Please refer to the map. Tokyo accounts for 70%. Next, Kanagawa Prefecture and Saitama and Chiba Prefecture. 99% of the food waste is coming from these 4 prefectures. We are processing around 40,000 tons of waste annually from these areas. This slide shows the number of registered recycling businesses in Tokyo and surrounding areas, not just for our animal feed recycling, but methane, etc. And very rigorous criteria needs to be met to register. There are 168 such recycling businesses in Japan, and there are 34 in the wider Tokyo area. So this ratio is relatively high. However, some of these facilities can only process about 5 tons per day. On the other hand, our facilities combined can process up to 300 tons per day, which is quite rare in this area. This number 2. This is Alpho's 2 centers. In total, 84,000 tons can be processed per year. However, even with this processing capacity, we can only process 12% of the food waste generated in the Tokyo metropolitan area. So we need much more to expand the capacity of these facilities. And this slide shows the processing cost for commercial waste of the major municipalities. $135 per ton for Tokyo, etc. On the other hand, for the Alpho's Jonanjima Feed Processing Center, $200 to $374 per ton. These commercial waste facilities are run by municipalities. On the other hand, we are a private company, which means that we need to generate some profit, and our price point is higher than that set by the municipalities. However, our customers understand the importance of recycling, customers meaning the waste generators. But because the cost is lower for the municipal commercial waste facilities, they tend to prefer the lower cost over recycling. And this is not just our challenge, but a challenge that is faced across similar facilities across Japan. Going forward, we would like to appeal our case to the national government, because this is not something that can be resolved by a single private company. We need to engage the entire recycling industry to promote further action from the national government. So this was a brief elaboration from my side. Thank you very much.
Mr. Tanami, thank you very much.
With this, we would like to conclude today's program. I would like to thank you once again for your participation. We had over 100 participants. Thank you so very much. I'd like to say farewell and thank you very much, everybody. With this, we would like to close. Thank you very much once again, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much.
また皆さんお会いしましょう。
Thank you. Bye.
お疲れ様でした。どうもありがとう。
Thank you very much.
どうも。
ありがとうございま
ありがとうござい
した。
ました。